Hello everybody, my name is Lee McKenzie. I'm a Director of Studies, Teacher Trainer and CELTA Tutor, and welcome to my video. I've chosen the PowerPoint format frame for this presentation. I hope you like it. The purpose of this presentation is to provide you with a lesson which you can use for working with learners' errors. So I hope you find it useful. First question. What is an error? Pause the video and think about this for a few seconds. One definition is given by Brown as a noticeable deviation from the adult grammar of a native speaker reflecting interlanguage competence of the learner. Now you may have noticed that when I read that definition I missed out an article. Maybe you didn't notice, but it's worth pointing out that native speakers don't speak in grammatically correct sentences. So it's a question of interpretation. What is a noticeable deviation from the adult grammar of a native speaker? Let's go into this question a little bit more in depth by addressing the question, why do learners make errors? Pause the video and think about this for a few seconds. One main reason is lack of knowledge, and this could be a result of overgeneralization of a grammar rule. For example, I go to the bank yesterday, the learner is assuming that all past simple verbs take ed endings. Could be misselection. Here the learner is searching for the verb neglect, but only finds the noun neglect. An error of transfer or L1 interference. I bought a book at the library. This could be a Spanish learner who is translating the word library directly from Spanish. Of course, nowadays you probably can buy books in some libraries. So we don't know exactly if this is an error. Probably it is. Could be a result of poor teaching. I've noticed that many teachers teach the present continuous as the ing form, which is potentially confusing as it doesn't point out that there is a verb, the verb to be, that goes with the ing form, which may be the reason why this learner made this mistake. It could also be a slip or performance error, and I'm sure during the course of this video you will notice me making slips or performance errors as a result of fatigue or concentration or processing various things at the same time. And this learner's having this difficulty here. He doesn't like fish. So type 1 errors are errors that learners can't self-correct. Corder calls these errors and distinguishes them from type 2 errors, which learners can self-correct. And he calls the type 2 errors mistakes. Going back to our earlier definition from Brown, I guess it's an open question whether slips reflect the interlanguage competence of the learner. So slightly different takes on what errors are here. Why work with learners' errors is a very important question, as some people believe that errors should be avoided at all costs. You can pause the video and think about this for a second. One reason is that it's to address learners' identified needs. You may work through the course book and notice that students don't struggle with certain grammar points, which begs the question, why teach them? May it be more useful to teach only what is relevant in terms of the problems the students are having? It's a good way to review structures and vocabulary. For example, after a free practice activity, you could put the errors on the board and do some delayed error correction. You could also begin a lesson with the errors from the previous lesson and elicit the correct forms for each. In course books, you may deal with present perfect in one unit and past continuous in the next unit, and adverbs of frequency in the following unit. But in reality, you may use those structures together within the space of a few sentences. So it may be more authentic to treat a range of structures together in one lesson rather than separating them into a discrete item approach. Learners expect to be corrected. If you ask most learners, this is what they would tell you, and they often feel they're not corrected enough. Learners may go through their whole English language learning career without noticing that certain things are wrong because they don't interfere with communication. But nevertheless, it marks them as non-native speakers. So it is our role as English teachers to point these things out to students. Especially if they're going to take an exam in English which focuses on accuracy, such as the IELTS or the proficiency. It's also a way of dealing with emergent language, that is, language which comes from the learners and is not pre-selected by the teacher or comes from the course book. So let's look at an activity for dealing with learner errors, which I'm going to show you can be extended into a whole lesson on dealing with learner errors. Just before we look at the lesson, try to complete this task on your own. You can pause the video again and think about your answer for a few seconds. So now I'm going to show you what I would do with those errors and how you could turn that into a lesson. The first task I would do with the students would be the following. Get these sentences on the board or on a handout and ask students in pairs to decide what is wrong with the following sentences and then to correct the errors. So for example, I'm living here for 7 years now. The wrong tense, and the correct version would be I have been living here for 7 years now. So do the rest with your partner. So then you would go through the answers together in open class, maybe on the board. The first one we've done, again, this emphasizes duration. It started in the past and is still ongoing. When did it start? 7 years ago. Here we need the present perfect continuous. Second one, the learner may be German and is confusing the word Land in German for the word countryside in English. Instead of area, neighborhood would be a more appropriate word for talking about part of the city. And traffic is uncountable and takes the singular verb form. There is a lot of traffic. And the to is probably unnecessary. Culture should be culture. So let's work on the pronunciation. Culture. And museums should be plural if we're using many. and we need the plural verb, which would be here, are. Of course, cinemas, again, should be plural. Instead of stressing, we need the word stressful, which would be the adjective in English. And again, countryside instead of land. And peaceful and quiet, not quite. Notice the difference in the length of the sound. Quite, quiet. The second one is longer and involves more movement of the mouth. Quiet, quite. Here, quiet is an adjective, whereas quite is an adverb. And we can't grow children, or at least not yet. So the correct collocation would be raising children. Now you could end the activity there and that would be fine, would be nice as a review activity, or you could take it further by doing the following activity with your learners. So the following sentences are answers to questions in pairs. What do you think the questions are? Let's do the first one together. Now do the rest with your partner. If you like, you can pause the video and do the activity yourself. And here are the answers. Maybe you had different answers. What is important to notice here, though, is that the questions are an opportunity for students to process the correct forms and to think and use the correct forms. I've highlighted the word countryside and neighbourhood, which are new language to students. Following that task, you can extend this further by doing some controlled practice. So listen to me say the sentences below and decide which words are stressed and which words aren't stressed. How long have you been living here? I've been living here for 7 years now. Are you from the town or the countryside? I'm from the countryside. My hometown is Piesdorf in Austria. Can you tell me about the neighbourhood where you live? My neighbourhood is very busy. There is a lot of traffic, but it's near the subway. What do you like about the city? I like all the culture. There are many museums and cinemas to visit. What do you dislike about the city? I don't like all the traffic. It's very stressful. Sometimes I miss the countryside. Where do you want to live in 10 years' time? In 10 years' time I want to return to the countryside. It's more peaceful and quiet. It's a better place for raising children. So then compare the answers with your partner, and in open class I would go through the suggested answers. There may be some of these open to interpretation here, but I think this is generally accurate. And following this, you could get students to practice the dialogue with their partner, getting them to focus on the correct stress. After that, they could switch roles and practice again. So all this is building up to the freer practice activity, which would be for students to switch partners and ask the new partner the following questions. Also tell them to record their partner's answers, as they will tell the class about their partner after the activity. This again is a chance for them to retrial and to use the structures and hopefully use them this time correctly and to consolidate their learning. In feedback on this activity, you could do some additional error correction and get learners to share the answers to their partner's questions with the rest of the class, again reinforcing what they've learned. If you're interested in doing any further reading, I would suggest the 3 following sources. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you for your attention.